It's December 8th, and it's our 8th story in A Story a Day Till Christmas. Tonight's story is one of my absolute favorites. It's The Tree That Didn't Get Trimmed. I'll let you take a look at that one. I'll try to remember to show you the pictures on the other pages as well. All young fir trees dream of being Christmas trees. With that vision of merriment before them, they endure the sharp sting of an axe and long hours pressed together on a freight car. But every Christmas there are more trees cut down than there are needed. And that is the story no one has ever thought to put down. The tree in this story should never have been cut. He wouldn't have been, but it was just getting dark in the Vermont woods, and the man with the axe said, "Just one more." He was a fine, well-grown youngster, but too tall for his age. His branches were rather scraggly. If he'd been left there, he would have been an unusually big tree someday, but now he was in that awkward age and didn't have a tapering shape and the thick, even foliage that people like on trees. Worse still, instead of running up to a straight, clean spire, his tip was a bit lopsided with a fork in it. But he didn't know this as he stood with the many others, leaning against the side of the grocer's shop. In the cold December days, he was very happy thinking of the pleasures to come. He had heard of the delights. Say hello to Arvio. The delights of Christmas Eve, the setting up of the tree, the tinsel balls and colored toys, and stars and peppermint canes, and birds with spun glass tails. "I shall be very grand," he said. "I hope there will be children to admire me." He even felt sorry for the first trees that were chosen and taken away. It would be best, he felt, not to be bought until Christmas Eve. Then in the shining darkness, someone would pick him out, put him carefully along the running board of a car, and away they would go. Arvio wants to listen to the story too. The tire chains would clack and jingle merrily on the snowy road. He imagined the big house with a fire glowing in the hearth, then hushed rustle of wrapping paper and parcels being unpacked. Someone would say, "Oh, what a beautiful tree!" How erect and stiff he would brace himself in the iron tripod stand. But day after day went by. One by one the other trees were taken, and he began to grow troubled. For everyone who looked at him had an unkind word. Too tall, too skimpy, or that top will never do. The grocer pushed him back carefully, and he toppled over and fell alongside the wall. No one bothered to pick him up. He was almost glad, for now his pride would be spared. Now it was Christmas Eve. It was a foggy evening with a drizzly rain. The alley alongside the store was thick with trampled slush, and he lay there among the broken boxes and fallen scraps of holly. Strange thoughts came to him. In the still northern forest, already his wounded stump was buried in forgetful snow. He remembered the wintry sparkle of the trees, the big trees with crusts and clumps of silver on their broad boughs, the keen singing of the lovely wind. He remembered the strong, warm feeling of his roots reaching down into the safe earth. And he had given it all up to be here, disdained and forgotten, in a littered alley. The splash of feet, the boom of bells, the cry of cars went past him. He trembled with self-pity and vexation. No toys and stockings for me, he thought sadly, and shed some of his needles. Late that night, the grocer came out to clear away what was left. The boxes, broken wreaths, empty barrels, and our tree with one or two others were all thrown through the side door into the cellar. The door was locked and he lay there in the dark. "So this is Christmas," he said to himself. All Christmas Day it was very still in the cellar. Feet went along the pavement above. There was a chiming of church bells. The unwanted trees lay on the stone floor, watching the furnace flicker. The day after Christmas, a man came in who wanted some greenery to decorate a cemetery. The grocer seized an axe and chop, 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 the sweet-smelling branches of the leftover trees were carried away. The naked trunks were thrown in the corner, but the trees were too disheartened to care. Now, our tree had plenty of time to think how silly he had been to imagine such a fine career for himself. He felt sorry for the other young trees still growing in the fresh, hilly country, who were enjoying some fantastic dream. Then one day a farmer came to the grocer's, and the naked, dusty fir poles were thrown into a truck with many others and made a rattling journey into the country. The farmer unloaded them into his yard and was stacking them up when his wife came out. "There," she said, "that's just what I need. A nice long pole with a fork in it. Jim, put that one over there to hold up the clothesline." It was the first time anyone had praised the tree, and his dried-up heart swelled with a tingle of forgotten sap. They put him near one end of the clothesline, with his stump close to the flower bed. It was wash day, and soon the farmer's wife began bringing out wet garments to swing and freshen in the clean, bright air. The very first thing she hung near the top of the Christmas pole was a cluster of children's stockings. Our tree was so cheerful watching the stockings and other bright little clothes plumped out in the wind that he didn't notice what was going on below him. A vine had caught hold of his trunk and was steadily twisting upward. And one morning, when the farmer's wife came out intending to shift him, she stopped and exclaimed, "Why, I mustn't move this pole. The morning glory has run right up it." So it held, and our bare pole was blue and green with color. Something nice, the old firs believe, always happens to the trees that don't get trimmed. They even believe that someday one of the Christmas tree poles will be the starting point for another magic beanstalk, as in the fairy tale of the boy who climbed up the beanstalk and killed the giant. When that happens, fairy tales will begin all over again. Thus ends our story. Say goodbye, Arvia.